already 2 videos in and I'm constantly making mistakes. Oh, that's bad. That's very bad. Let's actually get through this. Hello, everyone. It's iDark Symphony 777 with another fan fiction review. As always, link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts to the story. Finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of the world, so please respect that. So, the story I have is a 4-part series. It's a little mini arc written by Starlet Duck called the Captain Metal arc. It is encompassed 4 stories called Fortune's Comet, called Metallic Heart, Emotional Connection, and A Hero's Burden. Now, before I get into the actual story, I want to say ahead of time that for this specific little arc, I will be judging them simultaneously as one collective story. So technically, I'll be lumping all 4 stories as one story instead of 4 separate story, as well as separating them by individual. Like, how well do they stack up as they are together, and how well they stack up if they're separate. The reason I have to do this is because of how these stories are structured. They are very structured, very, very vastly different compared to, like, say, the Luniverse, where there's not really any connectivity. So basically, all 4 of those stories can take, with the exception of Grand Galloping Gala, can more or less be read by themselves and thus are more non-sequential. But this one it's 4 stories that kind of have to be read back to back. So I'm covering my bases, so just telling how as it is. So, what is the overarching story about? Well, the overarching story starts at Fortune's Comet. It is a monstrous comet that passes over the Mushroom Kingdom, I believe, like once 100 years. It is mentioned, like, I think, somewhere around here. Here it is. It is a prankster comet. The path it takes around our universe allows it to pass over our planet once every century. So it is very rare. It's basically like the mushroom version of Halley's Comet. So, what does this comet do? Well, when you make a wish, it's like very late at night for me. When you make a wish as Fortune Comet is passing, the wish comes true. Now, there are various cons to that. The fact that the wish, based on what you wish for, the bigger the wish, the more extravagant the wish, the more it's going to feed back into you for what it's going to pay. In essence, if you do something, I don't know, like wish for a cupcake, or what Mora does, he wishes for a cake. Then the comment's like, all right, here you go. Here's a cake. But when you get the main wish in the story, where Larry Koopa basically says, I want to be like Titanium Man, the comic goes, with a very, very sick sense of humor and a very noticeable stare. It will grant the wish, but there'll be consequences for that wish. It basically works the same way as Shin Miyamaru's Miracle Mallet from the Toho franchise. She uses the mallet to basically just make herself big. But as she explains it, if the bigger the wish, the more likely that the wish will blow up in your face, and 2, the fact that the more likely you have to pay, and the bigger the payment, the more likely you're not going to be able to payment. It's basically like that. So, Larry makes a wish on Fortune's Comet. He wants to become Titanium Man. The comet grants that wish by turning Larry into a robot. He's no longer a Koopa. He's basically just operates like how a robot operates. He just beep boop meows. He can't really sleep anymore. He loses a lot. He basically loses more or less humanity. He can't eat anymore, so he can't enjoy taste. He effectively has to run on a battery. He more or less, as explained in the second story, he loses like a lot of emotional attachment, so he can't really fall in love and stuff like that. He still has some emotions, but he does lose like a part of him that is part of like natural biology, like wanting to mate and marry and all that. He loses the ability to have that. and it kind of sticks with him, and he's trying to figure out how to pass things on. And the four stories kind of chronicle his journey on like how on like his ups and downs. Like, okay, I'm now a robot. I'm gonna be a superhero, and basically the ups and downs of that. In Fortune's Comet, not only does Larry get a uh, get a wish, uh, the Koopalings' father, not Bowser, in the Super Koopaling stories, their Bowser actually adopted the Koopalings, and their biological father, Jasper, makes a wish on the Koopalings because he was actually arrested because he neglected, nearly murdered the Koopalings. I can't remember if I reviewed Jasper in a rough, but in case I didn't, if you want to know the context, he had basically kind of a deadbeat dad who, finding out that his wife Opal had 7 kids, he basically just dumped them in the river as they were eggs and kind of just ran off. They eventually he eventually gets arrested for like the attempted murder, and he's been spending like 2 years at that point in a jail, in like the Darkland dungeons. He manages to escape. They do find out he escaped. Well, normal people do because everyone kind of knows that he's in jail. He makes a wish on the fortune comes. I want power. So what happens? We get a goddamn Puella Mag Puella Magi Madoka Magica reference. And what I mean by Madoka Magica reference, I truly mean just a gigantic Madoka Magica reference because Starlit Duck is my girlfriend and she actually showed me the anime, so I kind of so as soon as I read that part, it's like, wait a minute, are you referencing Madoka Magica? And she goes like, so yeah, he gets a soul gem. This is a soul gem. What you see on the screen is basically, for those of you who don't know the context, because this definitely needs context. In Madoka Magica, the Dick Cat, or as people like to say, Kyubi, the Dick Cat, basically harassed people, possibly sexually, but mostly just mainly just being a dipshit. Say, hey, you want to build a contract? Hey, you want to fulfill a contract? Hey, you want to fulfill a contract? And he just stares at your soul. And he just, and like, hey, you want to make a contract? Come on, it'll be fun. Nothing bad will happen. Something bad will happen. And more or less, he takes your soul, puts it in this little container you see on the screen, and there's your soul gem. Why does he do that? Well, because he wants to use your despair, little girl's despair, as fuel. And it's basically just one gigantically dark cycle where gives contract to girls. Girls futilely use magic and burn themselves out for something that they keep losing, trying to get stronger, to defeat witches. They inevitably turn into witches. Kyubi takes the despair from that moment as they turn into witches to fuel something to do with entropy. That was honestly, even watching the show, that was kind of like a bit confusing for me. So I kind of, I just know it has something to do with entropy, like trying to fuel as a resource, and basically repeating that cycle over and over again. There's no Kyubi. It's just Kyubi kind of taking the form of a gigantic comet in this case. So Jasper gets the soul gem. He kind of uses it as a necklace. He uses the power. He doesn't understand that he can't refill it because as time goes on and he's using the magic, the gem actually turns black. I.e., since the gem is a soul, as using it turns black and black. Because his soul getting corrupted, and eventually, after a while, when near the end of the story, it breaks and he turns into, I guess you can say, a witch if you're using the Madoka Magica lexicon, but in essence, he just kind of turns into a demon. And then Rosalina, and all the Koopalings with Larry kind of have to stop him. Larry kind of shows up at the last minute because he's kind of down in the dumps because Larry and Jasper do fight partway through the story. Oh, wrong one. I'll talk about that in a minute. Do fight in the story. Jasper actually wins because his power kind of just triumphs Larry's wish, because again, Larry wished for to become Titanium Man, while Jasper wished for power. And Larry kind of just gets bummed out. It's like, I can't be a superhero anymore. It's like, all right, how do we help him? And Rosalina shows up. It's like, we need help. I need your help. Wait, why don't you get Mario? There's no time. But Mario. It's like, you are the main characters. Oh, you're in. Hey, lady, you're breaking the fourth wall. Hey, come with me. And they just eventually they do eventually kill Jasper, so Jasper is now gone forever. And now Larry is kind of realizing, okay, I'm kind of stuck with this wish. I can't change myself back. Rosalina actually does offer a way, like, oh, you're more or less for Jasper, because she's able to like make wishes, like redo wishes. I guess since she controls Lumas and stuff like that. But yeah, that's Fortune Comet. Plot for Cold Metallic Heart. Don't worry, the characters are going to be at least relatively simple. Okay, Cold Metallic Heart basically continues on from Fortune Comet. It has Larry kind of settled his path as Captain Metal. He's fighting a Guma, and this girl named Fiery Tempest shows up. It's another superhero. It turns out Fiery Tempest was actually a girl named Peppy, who only turned to superheroing because she kind of felt like a third wheel between her and her two friends, Lilac and Stormy, who are kind of in a relationship, who are kind of in a lesbian relationship with each other. And she kind of feels like, I feel like the third wheel now, and kind of get awkward. And so, she's just trying to do this as like something to like kind of help her, like a sort of self-appointed therapy sort of deal. Larry is curious about her because he's like, oh, I want to find out more about her. Wendy plays shipper because it's like, oh, two superheroes. Kiss. Larry, of course, doesn't have the spark for her because, again, as a robot, he loses that ability to have that spark. We do get a little conversation between Iggy and Lemmy. Iggy and Wendy, my bad. I said Lemmy by accident. Iggy and Wendy over this whole phenomenon. It's like, well, yeah, Larry lost the ability to do this. Like, no, but you could still find the spark. Granted, this is like one of those situations where both right. They're both right in a way. I like that neat little touch, but ultimately, it's a fun. The plot is like it's definitely the weakest of the four stories. The story just ends with Larry finding Lilac and Lilac turning into like becoming a superhero too, because there was another story with like the Ferocious Five. I believe in that. I know I reviewed that story, and that's where I talked about I'm having a brain fart. I'm just having a massive brain fart. I can't remember. I remember. I do remember reviewing it. I'm just drawing a blank on what I specifically was talking about in that review. Anyway, she puts on the water. She becomes like tidal wave sort of thing, and they find out that Peppy has been captured by this notorious gang. They go and rescue her. They kind of beat up the other heroes. Yeah, that's kind of it. There is a funny moment where Peppy is like getting a call from Wendy, and she's like fighting Henry. She's like, I shouldn't have. Oh, I should have left my phone there. It's like, do I beat these guys or do I call the phone? I'm sorry. I'm calling. I'm answering. Like, yes, hello, yes, Peppy. How you doing? I don't know. No big deal. I think that's like kind of funny, but like, it's definitely the weakest. It doesn't really. I'll talk about more when I talk about the flaws. Emotional connection. This one is good. I would say this is probably the best. This one has Francis, of Super Paper Mario fame. Oh, I love going on message board and claim on games I never played before. But in this story, Francis is a NEET. He's basically he's the guy that built tech instead of what happened in canon, where the Xnox built tech as like a supercomputer that runs their whole operation, that helps run their whole operation. Francis just uses tech as like a goofy supercomputer to just have him to be able to play like all the games he wants for as long as he wants without like any issues. Francis finds out about Larry as a robot, so he's like, ooh. Francis, are you all right? Cheese puff. Decides to trick Captain Metal into a trap so that we can capture him, and so he can try and reprogram him to try and turn into a super soldier. Meanwhile, however, the bulk of the story is basically Larry and Tech kind of interacting with each other and trying to and basically getting to know each other and eventually kind of becoming friends. And eventually, at the end, Francis actually does win, sort of, in the end, where he does manage to reprogram Larry. However, Larry is taken out because Larry gets zapped by a taser. Don't question it. That'd be funny if it was if it was the prong one, because how the hell are you gonna be able to catch that? I don't know. I just like the picture. It's probably like the cop just walked up to him. It's like, yeah, and just zapped him with the personal taser. Larry gets zapped. And they managed to knock out Francis and arrest him. However, they have no way of fixing the program. They send Iggy. Iggy can't figure anything out. Tech manages to message them. It's like, okay, I can figure out how to do this. And well, because of how basically what happens is Tech, in order to kind of help Larry, kind of give him past time, Tech would kind of read his brain, robot brain, in order to kind of give up simulations, in order to entertain him. And as Tech absorbed that information, Tech also absorbed the ability to kind of gain emotions, and more or less, Tech kind of became emotionally aware and kind of started getting emotional, and Tech doesn't actually know how to actually run these emotions. And so at the end, Tech's like, okay, if I was able to absorb the emotions, I can upload them back into him to kind of forcibly reboot the wiring. However, while Tech did that, a kind of emergency virus was feeding back into Tech. So when Tech saved Larry, Tech ended up dying in the process, which leads to the last story, A Hero's Burden, which takes place immediately about a little bit after the previous story, and basically focuses on Larry trying to cope with the survivor's guilt and also possibly depression over being involved in Tech's death, because it's like I don't know. Survivor's guilt is a very complex thing. It's very hard to quantify how to properly describe survivor's guilt. It's not. It's one of those things that kind of vary between person to person. It's just I would say do your own research on that. And more or less, a hero's burden is just Bowser sends Larry to the Mario Brothers. The Mario Brothers bring him to New York to try and help him learn how to cope and try and get him and try to at least try to move him past what happened with Tech. It does eventually help in the end. I think overall, in these stories as a whole, in terms of the four stories individually. Nope, that's a future story. Fortune's Comet is probably the only one that you can read on its own, and that's ultimately the biggest issue I have with the story. As is reviewing this story, reviewing these four stories as separate stories, is because only Fortune's Comet really works by itself, because the other three stories don't need not only context from the previous stories, but also help to advance certain elements of the next story. So basically, elements of Fortune Comet bleed into Cold Metallic Heart, which bleed into Emotional Connection, which bleed into A Hero's Burden. That makes these three stories very, very difficult to quantify on their own. Now, I do think Emotional Connection and Hero's Burden are fine enough. They're still not as good as having to read on their own as Fortune's Comet is, but they get the job done. Cold Metallic Heart, on the other hand, is just by itself, it just is such a bad story. I get it doesn't really offer a lot. It's mainly just to set up a few elements for emotional connection. That's basically what the story is. It's not the first story of Starlit Ducks that I've done that did it. I believe I can't remember one of her other stories. I know I reviewed. I completely forgot the name of it. Let me actually check. Now here it is. Power Surge. Power Surge is a very well done story that's basically built. That's meant to be a build up to a future story. Power Surge does that very well. Cold Metallic Heart, on the other hand, doesn't, because it really doesn't add a lot to the events of emotional connection, mainly because the only thing it does by itself is introduce Fiery Tempest. And Fiery Tempest doesn't do a lot in emotional connection. She kind of just shows up at the beginning because Larry's kind of bored and it's like, I would rather keep hanging out with Tidal Wave and then be partners with you. You understand? And then eventually, later, she offers her help to the other Koopalings when she finds out Larry's missing, and gives a very poignant direction to like where Larry might be kept. Is that really enough to justify this plot being a bridge between the other two stories? It also doesn't help because, again, this story kind of requires Fortune's comment to kind of understand, because like you'd be wondering when you start the story, it's like, why is Larry a robot? Huh? And you're just ultimately confused. Even then, this specific story is not really that great. I don't like. I think Fiery Tempest is fine, but the other characters, Iggy is very basic. Like. I don't like how obnoxious Wendy is with her shipping. I get this part of her flaw because she tends to hyper focus on things. Star actually talked to me about it. I just didn't really like it. Where this is probably the Larry's weakest story as a character. He doesn't really grow that much. He just kind of just does things, and his whole weird obsession with Fiery Tempest just, I don't know. It's kind of awkwardly written, in my opinion. I don't think it's. There are good elements to it. I do think Fiery Tempest herself is decent. I do think her entire character story is fine. I do think bits and pieces, like the whole thing of like her wanting to become a hero, the client, like the phone call, I think was pretty funny. The climax, I think, was all right. Um, it's just there's not. I mean, honestly, even like the Gigaguma sort of thing where she kind of shows up, like, and they work together, and it's fine. But ultimately, it just I really did not like Wendy in this story. I don't. Like, I know, like I said, there's a flaw with Wendy in some of her stories, but it really sticks out here because she's not the main character and she doesn't really. And it also kind of feels like it's just the author's just kind of repeating her character arc from Ferocious Five, where she kind of had a similar character arc where she's only doing all this because she wants people like to be friends and stuff like that, and even like how that's set up with like, oh, you haven't talked to your friends in so long. Like, oh, I haven't talked to my friends in so long, which is kind of like similar reason with Ferocious Five, which like you kind of haven't talked to your friends. So like, oh, I should talk to them. It's like, okay, it's just a lot of her characters just kind of repeat from that story, and Ferocious Five just kind of did it better. Okay, it's all right. Uh, but yeah, other than that, I think emotional connection is good. Hero's Burden. My only real complaint about uh Hero's Burden from a plot standpoint is actually how the story ends. I think. I get it. I get it that the whole image of Larry Koopa, standing with between the Mario Brothers and their niece and nephew on the top of the Statue of Liberty. Okay, that's kind of a memorable image. It's like, this is really where the story ends. Like, wouldn't it make more sense for the story to end with Larry going home and kind of meeting with his siblings and like kind of reuniting? it just feels like it cut off too soon. Like you could easily put another chapter in where like Larry going home and reuniting with his family, maybe talking to more. That's another thing. I need to mention with this story. And this is not a complaint, but this is a missed opportunity. You have a plot where Larry's whole thing is he's suffering from survivor's guilt, possibly has depression, and you don't have the Koopa. You specifically write to have clinical depression to talk to him at any point in the story. Like it's I get what you're going for with the whole religion angle, because that's how they kind of help Larry out. They kind of take him to a church where like a random person passed away, and they kind of, and you know, the whole religious thing, the whole sermon and stuff like that, kind of teaching Larry about religion. I think that's pretty sweet, and I think that was pretty well done. But it's so weird how like the plot that would have made a lot of sense to have a specific Koopaling just talk, like you didn't really need to have Morton for that long in the story. You could have just had at the very end, like I said, with that extra chapter, just Larry goes home, he's still thinking about it. Morton kind of walks up, says, "I'm here for you if you need it." Just like something as simple as that would have been done well. So I just think the end of this is just kind of could have been done better. I think it's just cut abruptly. But other than that, I think the overall plot, the overall story structure is pretty well done. It's not amazing individually, but together as they feed off each other and kind of bridge into each other. Besides Cold Metal Heart, which again doesn't really add a lot by itself, but it is essential because it kind of does bridge to emotional connection, because you need to, because of the simple fact that Fiery Tempest has to be the one to point the finger, leading the Koopalings to Lava Falls, where they'll find Larry, mind controlled by Francis, more or less. So I think as a 4-part series, it's overall solid. It's overall solid as a one big arc. They're not really. They're only like mildly solid. Besides 38 on their own, but as a collective, they are a pretty dang good story. It does. Yeah, it's all right. Individually, but good. But they're pretty dang. They are pretty above average when it comes to the 4 stories together. I don't really have any complaints on that as a collective. Character wise, Larry. Oh, Larry. Why? Okay. I don't hate Larry. Most of my complaints from a character standpoint in these 4 stories is strictly Wendy. I think Larry is fine. I think he is. This what like. Here's the thing with Super Koopalings. Besides Wendy, Larry is like the weakest. Oh, contrived coincidences. That's what I was thinking of. Contrived coincidences. I don't know why that popped in my head right at that moment. But back to this. Larry and Wendy were the weakest characters in the Super Koopalings. And I think the Captain Metal stories do play a good part in kind of giving him his own thing, his own story, his own individuality, to kind of separate him and kind of say, yeah, I can do little adventure stuff with it. I like that. I like the fact that the author took a risk with giving like a separate identity, because that's the thing with a lot of these characters. Like each of these characters have specific identities that kind of aid themselves to whatever plot the author is trying to do. So like with Larry, she's trying to do like more adventurous stuff. With Ludwig or Lemmy, they're kind of doing more drama stuff. With Morton, they're kind of doing more morose. She's doing more morose stuff. Iggy is more slice of life, and so on and so forth. It's basically how they kind of interact. And Larry was the only one who didn't really have that identity, that one thing that's kind of separates him, to kind of give him his own niche among the other Koopalings. Captain Metal gives him his own niche by having him be like a more adventurous sort of thing. So like, oh, I want to do like a more superhero vibe, like more adventure sort of deal. You just have Larry. He's right there. So I really appreciate that that Star finally gives him his own specific niche among the other Koopalings, because he was kind of like the jackass of them. But then again, Icky was kind of already that, and Icky just did it better, because Icky, the whole thing is like it constantly blew up in his face. It's like, I will not learn this lesson at the next episode. Dude, you're breaking the fourth wall. I don't care. It was more entertaining with Iggy. I think that's even like the fact that Larry kind of knowing the ins and outs of the whole thing. I think it's kind of just fits with him being a whole. He's the gamer guy. He's like the childless one compared to everyone else who kind of grew up and he kind of got left behind. So having the story being like a sort of coming of age for him of like, I finally got something. I finally got something of my own. I think that works for him. And I think his overall character arc throughout the 4 stories are really well done. But I do think Hero's Burden does handle it the best with him. It really does accurately portray someone who's kind of going through like witnessing the death of someone, like someone you, especially since Tech, they only known each other for a while, and Tech sacrificed his life for him. Of course, again, survivor's guilt is a very difficult thing to kind of accurately describe, but I do think it is very well done, especially since Larry constantly, the idea like when Mario, Luigi, and Larry are like doing Mario Kart. He starts like Larry's in the lead, and not really in the lead. He's in second place, and he starts getting flashbacks to Tech because he's getting reminded of Tech, and he's going off road, not realizing it. It is a very well crafted angle for Larry, and I think that's pretty fun. I think that's pretty well done. Is it the best character arc? I mean, as much as I like the fact it gives him a niche, it does only give him a niche. He is very much like Wendy in that more simply needs to be done with him, because all the other characters, well, him, Wendy, and Morton still need like more, but Morton and Wendy kind of had their niches. Larry just needs more time to like get his own space and have room to grow. I think the author is probably going to do it, but this is still very much Lemmy, Roy, Ludwig, and Iggy's whole deal, and Morton, Wendy, and Larry are like supporting characters that just show up, that take over the whole thing once in a while. So, but I do think his character is good. Not great, but I think it's solid. Grammar-wise, I think it's fine. I didn't see any grammar errors. Oh no, wait! There was one more grammar. There was one grammar error. Right here. I think it is a very, very big grammar error. It is right here. Yeah. Okay. Where is it? Yeah. Right here. I honestly think this should be italics, because it just really doesn't flow with Tech. Since it's an email, you either make it italic or put like quotation marks in it. Other than that, I think the first part of text message is the same way. Where is it? Where is it? Oh yeah, right here. Yeah, this should be italic too, or quotation mark. But other than that, I don't really have any grammar errors. Oh my! Also, it feels it. For those of you who don't know, I'm happy that I can do this again, because this just makes it so much easier when it comes to like showcase what I'm talking about. But also, I wouldn't be surprised if it took this down again, because people decide to just start copy pasting entire stories onto AO3. That's what caused this to go away the first time. Wouldn't be surprised. Other than that, there's no grammar errors. What pacing and writing? Pacing I think is pretty fine. Uh, I do think maybe the story could have been stretched a little bit longer. Uh, but ultimately, I'm fine with how it is. This story really should have been longer because again, it just kind of ends abruptly. Like you can easily just squeeze an extra chapter in there. But the other two stories, I think. No, wait. This story really needs to be longer. This story, just honestly, this just, like I think a lot of the issues just come with the fact that the story's too short. I think this is around the time she started making the stories longer. I don't think she's as a time. I believe she didn't perfect that yet. I believe she perfected it after these stories. But there's all that. Would I recommend these stories individually? No, not a chance. Yes, on their own, but as one collective story, I would say they are good enough collectively to recommend. They're not flashy, they're not amazing, but they are all overall solid if you take the time to read all four of these stories back to back to back to back. That you might have a good enjoyment. Again, they're not amazing, but I do think for what they are pretty good. Favorite part? I don't know. I just find the whole idea of like Mario packing heat kind of funny image. And it's like, where are you going? Oh, we're going to a place my pop used to go. Wait, this is a gun. This is a gun. This is a shooting range. Yeah. It's like, wait, oh, wait, why are you packing heat? It's like, yeah, I pack heat. I legally own a gun. You don't use it. Do you want me to use it in the Mushroom Kingdom? No, 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 no. Exactly. I don't know why. I don't know why, but just the mental image of just Mario just casually reaching his pocket, pulling out a handgun. It's just kind of a funny mental image. Just be lucky he didn't pull out a Garand, or better yet, please be happy that Larry didn't use a Garand. I don't know. I just find the image funny. That's probably my favorite moment as the entire story. I know it's weird, but it's my review. What would I do to fix it? I wouldn't change. I wouldn't change anything about Fortune's Comet. With emotional connection, there is one small moment I would choose, and being here. So in chapter 4, how Francis captures Larry is he basically kind of makes a fake news article because that's how Larry finds crimes that are happening. He basically uses his internet brain to scan the internet at once. Francis puts a fake article saying that a family is missing in Lava Falls. Larry notices it. Okay, goes to Lava Falls. All right, gets lured into a alley by Francis. Larry follows him, finds Francis. Francis obviously, decloaks. Now, at this point in the story, Larry is very, very mad. Like he basically only doing the going to Lava Falls because he's desperate to try to punch. He's not even trying to solve a crime. He really just wants to punch someone in the face. So when Larry just randomly shows up, he just gets randomly scared and tries to run away. And that's how Francis gets him. Kind of just knocks him out, and then drags him. It really doesn't make sense. So what I would do is that instead of getting scared and running away, Larry, eager to want to punch something, just like tries to interrogate Francis. Francis just tells Larry, like, "Oh yeah, I kidnapped that family." He's like, just trying to egg Larry into doing something rash. Larry predictably takes the bait, rushes at Francis. Francis then zaps him and then drags him. It would flow much better and it make more sense in the context of the story. That's really it. A hero's burden. Just add another story. Just add another chapter at the end where Larry goes home, but like he realizes, I finally at least partially gotten over Tech's death. He goes home. He kind of just looks around, wanders around the castle. Morton kind of walks up to him, said, "I'm here for you." Like you don't really need Morton to say anything more than that. You could, but you don't have to. And I think as it is, Morton just kind of, again, it really would help by having the character who knows about PTSD and not PTSD, about depression, kind of talk to the guy who's kind of going through like this depressive state right now and kind of just help him out with it. I just think it would add a little bit more. And then with cold metallic heart, I don't even know where to start with this one. Fix, at least bring up the art. I don't really know what to say about Wendy because this is more of a personal thing, personal taste. I understand because she did explain Wendy's whole thing with me, and I kind of, they kind of put it off on what I wanted to say about this. I think mainly this story just needs this story out of all four is the only one that really needs a rework because it really is it really does not add anything to the overall story arc. It really doesn't. So if I had to take a guess on what like to add, it needs to be longer. It really does. I can't even say anything about the fights because as I said before in other reviews, fights are not really the easiest thing for anyone to write. I'm talking about, you meme king. I'm talking to you. I'm calling you out, the king of memes. Fights are just very difficult to write because they just naturally lend themselves to the visual stuff. So I can understand the fight scene kind of being bad because the star is just probably not going to be that good at them. Even like if she gets like a lot of practice, and it's just that is what it is. Maybe incorporate Wendy more in the early part of the story. Maybe incorporate Stormy and Lilac more because they're because they are integral to Peppy's character arc. Maybe have Ludwig more into the story because it's like, okay, I don't know. I don't know. This is like a confusing one to want to fix because the only thing I can think of is just making it longer and adding Peppy and Lilac sooner. It's really the only thing I can think of. Like, I don't know because I have to try and figure out how to like change it, but also keep it like as like the tissue between Fortune's comment and emotional connection because that's basically what the story is. It's supposed to be the bridge between these two stories, and it's out of my depth. I'm gonna ban this one. So yeah, that is Captain Metal. I think they're overall solid group of stories. They do have some flaws, but I think overall they are solid. They're unspectacular, but they get the job done on what they're trying to tell. And I will see you next time. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.